Welcome to Impactful. Today we will talk about implementation of AI in the newsrooms. Our guest is Mathias-Felipe de Lima-Santos, a journalist, researcher, and consultant. Welcome, Matthias.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here and share a bit about my experience and also my work in academia about AI and media.
How did it all start? How did you make connection between journalism and AI?
So my connection between journalism and AI started a long time ago because frankly, I came from IT background, so I was technologist before, and then I decided to move to media industry, and that's where I tried to combine my both background. And back there, I was concentrate on data science more and how this could be applied to journalism and somehow connect with data journalism. And then I had the opportunity to join a European project called JOLT. And this project, which was a research project, that's also where I started doing research. So I could have the opportunity to work also with, media partners. And we had the possibility to spend some months with them and then developing project with them. And that's where I did my first AI project for media. So I work with La Nación in Argentina. So we developed a project that we were trying to map the solar farms across the country because renewable energy was a hot topic there back then because they had another government that were really investing on that. But we wanted to see how this was growing. Yeah, so it was very interesting back then because my idea was to work with data journalism and then it naturally become AI. I remember also Flor Coelho, who is the news manager, education manager there. She was like doing a lot of, she spent 1 year, she did a sabbatical, if I'm not mistaken, at Harvard. And she was like studying, the impact of AI in media. That was really, at the beginning, no one was talking about that. And she was one of the pioneers of doing that. And that was really good because she came with a lot of ideas. And then I also had my own ideas and we could find the intersection and do this first experiment. And from that, I started working with other projects, with other organizations, but also investigating the impact of AI in the media industry from the academic lens. And that was very interesting because combining both was very unique and very challenging for me because I always have to navigate from one to another. But it was a very unique perspective because also, as people might know, La Nación is a traditional newsroom. It's a large newsroom in Argentina. But then I had also the opportunity to work with smaller newsrooms in Brazil and other countries. And that's a different scope and different way of how we can bring this technology to them. So that's how I start also looking for AI from a critical lens and trying to understand how this would impact the media industry and, create this, what I usually call AI divide. I know organizations that have resources and have staff and have time to dedicate to build these tools or experimenting these tools, and other organizations that doesn't have money, staff, and then they are experimenting as, opportunities show up, but some of them struggle to continue developing that.
You worked with and spoken to many large and small newsrooms around the world. What are the most common and useful applications of AI in newsrooms?
Among this project that I had the opportunity to, I studied more and interview the creators. I see a lot of projects that are really trying to help, journalists to do their work faster and also do part of what they're trying to do with data journalism, but now doing with AI. So analyzing huge amount of data, having access to the data, which was not possible or was not easy for journalists if they don't have the skills. So some of these tools are in this way helping to, get insights from the data. But also there is a lot of tools that are giving access to then to other ways of analyzing information that it's sometimes really complicated and require a lot of time. Among these projects, for example, we have seen, one that attracts a lot of my attention is, for example, in Costa Rica, there is a news organization called Clip, and they create, like a platform that they connect different sources of data, and then they try to get insights to help investigative journalism. Similarly, in Argentina, there is one organization, a large organization that create from a group that's called Group Octubre, and they create, Vision Latina, which is a platform that give access, information for journalists about the visual content that they have, so they could easily search and trying to find, one video about someone or, pictures about someone that they are like doing some, news story, for example. And this is something that they are trying also to become a product that they could sell for other organizations. And that's something that I think, I believe that's going to be the future of these organizations, that not only offering, like information for the audience, but also offering products that's going to help maybe other news organizations, but other, sectors, and they could benefit from the revenue stream that these products will generate.
Could you highlight some projects that have impressed you the most?
The other thing that was very impressive, and for me it's very interesting, was a case from Econai in Nigeria, and they create like a full platform to, getting data from the audience, trying to create a community, and everything related to sustainability, these natural disasters that they have a lot. So trying to bring data about that sometimes was really hard for them to have access. So having a platform that helps journalists, audience to connect them and having this data and trying to visualize the data and have an environment that they could grasp more information. That's something very interesting, very unique. There are a lot of other projects. And even in Europe, for example, I was spending some time with RAI, the Italian public service media, and they were developing a lot of interesting projects. So they, similar what the Argentinian newsroom did, they create also a platform that, journalists could search a term and get, like news stories, but also wrote, videos from this person or some else or an entity that they want to search. And they also start experimenting in, I think that's something that we're going to see every time more with generative AI. So just large language models, and for example, they use that to generate titles, which is very interesting. And I think it's very important because then can give ideas to journalists and also help them to, become SEO driven, because today what we are doing stories is to be in a platform that people can find it. And if there is a machine that can give us suggestions and then we can choose or even inspire us to create a title that will, help the machine to find, but also the audience to find our stories, that's going to be very relevant. And the same is different organizations, RAI and also others that I saw, like Núcleo in Brazil. They were creating this summarization, trying to summarize the stories that help them and help the audience as well to, absorb a huge amount of information in a very summarized way that, diminish the time that journalists need to, for example, look for information, confirm, but also give them new ideas and help them to create new stories.
What are the main challenges newsrooms face when using AI?
Smaller newsrooms tend to have a lot of issues to develop these tools for different reasons. As I mentioned, like budget is one of the main reasons, but it's also what motivates some of these smaller organizations to do some of these experiments. As I was telling you, for example, the grants from these big tech companies or, funding that they create, grants, attract these organizations to develop ideas that use, these trend topics or, the hype of AI, and bring this money for the newsroom that also is going to support the newsroom for a short time. But on the other hand, what is really hard for them, it's like first trying to use these models in a proper way that works for the different languages, because we are talking about smaller newsrooms that sometimes they cover a minority language or a language that's not well trained, even though, for example, Indonesian is a language that's spoken by a huge amount of population, because Indonesia is a huge country, but not necessarily the models are really well prepared for Indonesian, Bahasa Indonesian. And so, for example, then we have countries that, they speak something that is a hybrid between different languages. For example, Philippines that they speak Tagalog and English. So the systems need also to be prepared to deal with, something that is hybrid, is not even one language. So they are struggling a lot with that. And for example, it's not only the models per se, but also the basics of technology. For example, one of the projects that I interviewed, which is amazing project that was trying to bring, these news stories for people who are blind or have any, visual discapacity, so they couldn't read properly. And so they are doing this AI that is converting the text to speech, which is something really useful. And nowadays it's way more natural than it used to be, which was a robotic voice. So it's something that it looks like someone is reading for you. But the problem was not that, but when they're trying to bring this technology and combine different newsrooms, they face a big issue that, the CMS of these organizations are made of different systems, and they not necessarily have, APIs or ways to connect to the solution that they created. And then they create a platform or a solution, let's call it that they cannot move forward to every single organization, because there is different systems, different, and making solutions that needs to a lot of adjustment, that needs to connect with different platforms, is something that these organizations are not prepared. Then this brings me to the other issue that they have, because their staff usually they don't have usually they don't have technological staff on their organizations. And then when they decide to do a project and they get the money for that, then they hire someone. But who proposed this project? Someone that not necessarily know how these things work. And when they realize that what they propose is way bigger than the scope of the money that they have to, reduce the scope, do another project. Sometimes they try to develop the idea, but then they realize that's going to take way more than, what is offered for this grant. And another thing is to paying these people, because technological people, the staff that have technical skills, they cost way more than journalists. So these organizations are also not prepared mentally to, have, pay slips that they were not used to have. So they didn't plan to have that when they developed a project. And there is a lot of competition, because usually when they offer a position for someone to work with that, this person needs to learn to understand the business of, journalism, how the industry works. But once they get it, they get offers from other industries that pay way more, for example, banking, fintechs, and these professionals move to other industry. And then we have the project that were being developed, and then they need to find someone. So there's also this learn curve that it's really important, and they cannot continue with this person because they need to pay more, and then they don't have money for that. So there is a couple of issues that these organizations, mainly the small ones, struggle a lot.
Unfortunately, those are not the only problems. There are more.
I think another thing that's really important, and the data to train these models, because not necessarily there is a lot of data available. And mainly when we are talking about, these countries that have freedom of information that is really bad, or open data is also really bad. All this data that could, use to train these models are not available. It makes harder for them. And one of the organizations that I work with, in the past, and they struggle a lot to find data to train their model. That we're talking about, visual content, because there is no data available for that. So we need to collect this data. That means, also to pay for this data or using in a proper way that is going to be, against laws, and it's going to also respect the values that is important for these organizations. So there is a lot of issues that are connect to the development of AI that organizations in general are not aware, and mainly when you're small organizations and you have also, like 5 to 10 people in the newsroom, and there are 1 or 2 people that are really interested and they move forward with this project. And when they don't have support of their, news managers or someone who is leading this team, it's really hard to move forward. So I think there is all these issues that it's really important, and these organizations have to be in mind when developing, these projects.
When we talk about the data, it is also important to mention disinformation and misinformation, which is also a topic you focus on.
I think disinformation is really a topic that has been hot, and a lot of people discussing about that for the last years. And with generative AI, the situation is going to escalate for a level that we haven't imagined. And just to give you an example, I was walking the street, and then I was waiting for something, and then I heard a conversation. I planned my trip using ChatGPT. And for them was like, that's the most reliable source. It is like Google, so they could find all the information. But the point is, they are not aware how these tools are created. They are not aware how this data works. And we know that generative AI, and particularly what we're talking here, ChatGPT, create, results that are not necessarily real, but, they look like real. You can have, like a plan, someone plan a trip for you saying, you should go to this spot because the best time is April. And then if you don't check this information in the internet, you're going to realize that sometimes the best time is November, December. So and people don't have this literacy because they don't know how this information is produced. And when we use ChatGPT, there's, very few place that we can identify that the information is not real. Sometimes the tool will tell you, oh, maybe this information is not real, you can check, but most of the times they just reply you as a conversation, and then you get the information that you want, but you are not sure if you're not familiar on how these systems work. So I think that's the biggest issue. So people will tend to create every time more on this generative, the content that was generated by AI. And I think there is also another issue that it's going to be challenge for us, practitioners, researchers, to first identify this content that was generated by AI. This AI generated content is going to be every time, more realistic, looks like real content. And our tools need to escalate at the same level to identify this content. And I think I'm not saying that we shouldn't use these tools, but we should be aware, on how to use these tools and how we can engage better with them, and also be aware that, the content that they generate is not real sometimes.
Your primary field is academic work. We often read your papers. Recently achieved an outstanding result with more than 500 citations, an incredible achievement. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, no, this academic milestone, sometimes it's really interesting because, for example, I reached these 500 milestones, as you mentioned, but for me, what matters more is not that people are, citing my work, but they are able to read and get some information. And for me, it was really important because I'm an early scholar, so I have been in academia for 4 or 5 years. It's not that long, and having the opportunity to, reach different people. And when I look in my citations, I see that it's from different regions of the world. That's what matters for me most, because I see that, my work and also people read that and people are interested in that. That's why I believe more than just the number. But I was like really surprised to read that in such short time. But yeah, I just want to thank you for everyone who have the opportunity to read. I know there are some, and I think it's really important in academia, people realize there are different types of work that, you put a lot of effort and you believe that is the best one. And then other ones that you say, oh, okay, let's do this case study. But sometimes it's way better than the one that you put a lot of effort. And I think what matters most is not what you think, but what people, when I reading your work and understanding and grasping this information, for me, that's what matters most.
And a final question, what we can expect in the next year or the years to come?
I think we can expect for the next years a lot of, investment on generative AI, not only from major organizations, but, other industries as well. And we're going to see these models becoming, powerful and bigger and doing things that we don't expect. We saw now Sophia, we saw all the other experiments of OpenAI making their models very strong. And then the competition trying to reach out, Google with Gemini and, another level as well. So I believe that the next years will be really important. We understand the limits of AI and how we can use that. And at the same time, I think it's going to be a lot of people creating more awareness of the risks of AI and somehow pushing people to having this AI literacy, trying to understand what is AI. It's not only about, digital literacy, that how use technology, but it's specifically about AI. What is AI? How this data is produced? Because now it's a buzzword. Everyone is talking about AI, generative AI, ChatGPT. But what is that? People are not aware of what is that. They know a word and they know that everyone is talking about. So that's one thing that I'm expecting. And I'm also expecting, as I mentioned before, that disinformation